we're going to break up into groups here in a little bit, but at the first Dodging the Memory Hole, we broke into groups, and we were looking at partnerships. And I've ranked them here, and I also have some hard copies that I'm going to share with you as groups. But I just wanted you to see what the prior groups came up with in terms of their ranking of the opportunities, where we should be looking for partnerships. So I will just run down, let you guys look at these.
So what was the ranking scale?
These were voted on basically like a DtMocracy thing where we had people voting for what they thought was most important in the groups. As we would work in the groups, bring the presentation out, the list of things, and then people would put stickers on them to say which ones they thought were the best ideas. 3 is the highest, yeah. And there's a bunch more here. Interestingly, legal copyright attorneys, library associations, press associations, academic, professional, technologists, CEOs. So this is just one vote. You know, this is not necessarily a gospel by any means, but it gives us a sense of the thinking here for opportunities, people to work with. Then we looked at some key messages, like what is it that we want to say. What is it that we think is important to communicate with these potential partnerships? So there are some, I think, these were not ranked, but I'll just run through them here. I thought this was good pairing. It's 2014, do you know where your content is? It's 2024. Don't throw your work away, make your investment count. Your news today, your history tomorrow. This was just I think the idea of news organizations having some control over the legacy of the content they've created. We had a lot of ideas, and then this next one is for the key messages to the memory institutions, libraries, etc. Success stories. I like that one. Saving the future from amnesia. And then funders. Open the gates to and our national heritage. Reaching out to infrastructure, IT. So, as I said, I'll send these out. So for strategic outreach, we were thinking about for the media content producers, what do we need to do? What are the tasks that we need to make? And I want to try to take this work and take it to the next step in terms of what are we willing to do as a group, or what can you do as an organization? So getting the data that shows the potential market, et cetera, for monetization, those possibilities, new business strategies, organizational involvement, media campaigns, working with education. So these are all, I mean, the one-on-one conversations, obviously that's something that we can do, but what do we say? Do we want to draft an elevator speech or something? Sorry, get my email here. Yeah. Conferences, tangible examples, councils. So, thank you for bearing with me there, but I just wanted to kind of bring you up to speed with some of the thinking from the last event, and hopefully we'll move these forward. I think, let's see, we have 4 pads, so I'll have you break into 4 groups. The first part of this activity is to grab, if you don't have them already, get some Post-its so you can jot your ideas down. We want to take this idea of what you can do or what your organization can do, and I want your thoughts about what you can do to take these next steps in terms of the strategy, advancing our strategy. Taking those key messages, taking the idea of partnerships. Who is it that you can talk to? Who is it that you can network with? What is it that you can do with your abilities in terms of technology? Whatever your skill set is, let's just do a little silent brainstorming. We'll just do this for like 5 minutes and crank out an idea per each Post-it and just keep those, and we're going to stick those up on the boards in a minute.
When you say you, do you mean sort of like our institutions or us as individuals? Or?
Either you, if you have the ability to get your organization to do things, yeah. Either you or your...
Let's go ahead and say
whatever level of influence you have, what can you do with that? Yeah.
But right, so is it things that people here could do?
Yeah.
We specifically could do.
I would say think about yourself first, and then you can widen it from there. But if you can think about what sort of things you personally, what you're interested in, what your talents are, your connections. I would like to get specific rather than too general, because I think that's the way we're going to make progress, is if we identify. So think about what you can do first as an individual, maybe in your circles where you have more influence. If you're able to wave a magic wand and take care of all this, let me know. Okay, next phase. Phase 2. We're going to put your Post-its on this 2x2 grid. This axis, I can never remember X or Y. Which is this? That's Y. Y. Y is
Thank you, Herb.
difficulty. I didn't know. I said there wasn't going to be a test, but I was wrong. And Herbert, he passed very well. The difficulty or cost and importance or impact on the bottom. And then we'll divide it up. So you guys have to hash this out where these ideas might go on here. And we'll talk about, and then each one of these, we'll talk about each one of these areas. Okay? Groups, attention up here. First group is, can you share out some of the ideas you came up with? And then also note that we have now assigned the quadrants Some values: luxurious, which are things that would be nice to have. Strategic are things that we really need to do, but we're going to have to figure out a way to do it. Strategic. Targeted, this first quadrant down here, are things that are like high, immediate kinds of things. And then high value is this kind of sweet spot. So you guys got a lot of stuff in one of the nicest areas to be in. But they're all important. They all have their place.
Sure, so our group had a fair amount of discussion about education and training opportunities, ways to help journalists understand some digital asset management and sort of archiving stuff sort of on the front end, or to encourage more like iSchool students and things like that to work on born digital news projects, digitized news projects. So those are a lot of what's going on in here. And then there was another idea in the mix to try and encourage more public libraries to take on doing web archiving to complement their collecting of newspapers for their area. And it's relatively low cost in that you can do that with an archivist subscription and grab thing. At the same time, there was also our sort of more strategic ones up here ended up being so there was some questions about sort of interoperability across foreign digital materials when they're aggregated and how to work with that. That's sort of a research area in many ways. And then there was another project that was very high value but low cost that was working on sort of making the case to administrators and people higher up in news organizations and sort of libraries and organizations about the importance of this and sort of establishing those partnerships. Are there any other things, group? There you go.
Okay. Liz, you want to bring yours up here?
Sure.
I'm going to save these.
Okay, so I don't remember what you said, what the quadrants were.
Luxurious.
Luxurious?
No, that's strategic. Yeah, luxurious at the top. You don't have any. You guys are not into luxury.
No, we had no luxuries.
Targeted
Targeted,
and high impact.
high impact, no luxuries. Okay, so strategic, basically we had a whole group which I would call the technology stuff. It was provide an institutional repository, provide for preservation, provide internet access, those types of things, the preservation stuff. Then we had 4,000 advocacy things, which are all grouped together. And it was both advocacy in cultural heritage organizations, advocacy to community groups, advocacy to the press, share stories, create stories, etc. So there's a whole bunch of advocacy. Obviously, we had a ton that grouped in this area. Rights management issues, legal issues. We thought creating pilot projects as a demonstration was really important. At the last minute, we had this epiphany that we hadn't put in the ask for the content. Building off of what Brian said, nobody came and asked us. And one of our, Deanna said, well, I just went to the Xenia paper and asked for the stuff, and a week later I had it. So we think this is really important. And then we have another packet called project management. All the stuff that archivists and librarians and museum curators do. Inventorying, assessment, helping with metadata, advice on how to evaluate what the news provider had. So I just put a sticker on it that says project management. And then building collaboratives. So that's all in this area. Sort of high impact, minimal to low cost. And then in this area, what was this area called?
Targeted.
I have,
It's okay.
Can't remember stuff problem. Yeah, targeted. So this is developing donor relations, funding, the business model exploration. It's the education area, developing education tools, educating people on preservation, metadata, and then the standards area. Beginning to educate people on what standards content should be created in. So those are we sort of have blocks of areas.
Thank you, Liz. Finding common ground and working through this was good, because it was a public-private partnership discussion, and we certainly are represented at. So finding the ground in which we can find something that is doable and workable and moving forward is something that we kind of went around and around on a number of things. So, and I'm voicing some of the ideas that came from the group, and if I didn't describe correctly what the point was, please speak up, okay? One of the main issues that we thought that was important was a communication that went across from newspaper entities to local memory institutions like libraries. And at the local level, that's a much more difficult process because it's not that well organized. Many local newspapers feel like they have a strong monetization opportunity in their papers. We felt that that was something that was probably keeping them from getting into a conversation on a different level about what the value of their archives might be. And so we did think that there may be a conversation that should be going on between libraries and newspapers about some sense of sharing and what they can use with that. But in order to facilitate that kind of a conversation, we tried to think of what agencies might be capable of carrying a broad communication. The state press associations obviously are the first obvious choice with that because they do have strong relationships. But then on the state side, we try to think of where there might be a strong, either a state system of libraries that have a developed communication with local libraries, and then picking up from an earlier suggestion that maybe there are 3 states and 3 models that could be attempted with this. One could be a very strong state system like the Kentucky Press Association's relationships that obviously has evolved and has some already conversation going on. Maybe a more diffuse model might be important for those that haven't those relationships, and we could start building that communication, building those relationships. And so that seemed to be a real good idea to start with. But then building off of that, then we need to start getting some case studies about that experience. And so a suggestion was to have a website where some of the experience that's coming from that could be built in with just case studies as a resource for anybody else who's working or thinking about this that they could get involved with. On the business side, one of the things that was voiced from News Group that's already doing a lot of work in gathering a lot of the press PDFs that are forming the basis, at least for having material for preservation, is that there are some engineering issues and some technical issues that the technology side needs to be more involved with. The mechanics of doing this are extremely complex, and the development is not really there. So one suggestion was to sponsor or have some kind of a hackathon for ideas for preservation, for archival and preservation, that would either be, could be engaged at a number of levels. High schools, it could be colleges, it could be wherever. But trying to get some of the brains that are out there engaged in this and working on it. So let's see. We had one here on, I'll let our gentleman from, on indexing and what is this, discovery techniques? Go ahead. You speak, I'll let you go ahead. And
I think you've covered most of it.
you sure? Have I? Okay. I wasn't sure. And then we hit crowdsourcing technologies for, what is that, I'm sorry? Is that vendors?
Oh, venues.
Venues. Crowdsourcing technologies and venues for funding some of these efforts?
Right.
Okay. And then relation management and outreach. Want to speak up on that?
Oh, that was me. That was I put it in the low value because it's so easy to reach out and start conversations. So outreach seems like the initial place to start is just getting these conversations going.
Good, okay.
This way it's low difficulty, high impact.
Okay, good. Anything else we want to add? We're good? Okay. Fine.
All right.
Well, we've got good coverage of a lot of different areas. Down in the targeted area, conduct research that relies on born digital news, facilitate work, so letting people know that universities have intern positions and staffing and student labor, just letting people know that there are resources there. Outreach to news groups so that they know who we are and what we do, even if that means rather than contacting them to news coverage of our events, just to say you want to tour our facility to see what kind of resources we have. Let's see what else. Create documents on digitization costs, storage costs, et cetera, that can be used by institutions outside archives and libraries. Expose and discuss the problem. Provide expertise on various aspects from web archiving and social media archiving to indexing and arrangement description. Up here, seek funding for training programs to teach reporters how to use the Born Digital News archives efficiently and effectively. In the middle, there's inventory the collections that archives and libraries are collecting. Also inventorying what kind of materials aren't being collected so that you know what is in danger of being lost. And there's a big new ECHO grant. So if you are from North Carolina, you know the NC ECHO project. If you don't, grab one of us and we'll tell you about NC ECHO. So anyway, that's in the middle. Let's see if I can read this. Test case for small liberal arts colleges, and as far as broadcaster partnerships, that was from partner with organizations to create support or proof of cause concept projects, provide a repository for long-term preservation, seek funding to experiment with new digital projects based on Born Digital News archives, aggregate content, help write grants to be able to collect and preserve these materials, convene archivists, Born Digital News producers, researchers, and community to serve as a hub for these kind of discussions in your local area. Build partnerships in sustainability, digital preservation as a cost share with other institutions, and provide use analysis to news organizations so they can know how much of their content is actually being used. That's us.
Wow, that's great work. We got a lot of great ideas. I'm gonna take these, compile them, get back to everyone with what we've come up with here, and I would encourage you to carry forth. You've got the knowledge here of what you can do, so please, let's go out and take the energy from this conference and move things forward with digital preservation of news.